right, we've got some questions that we're going to answer, hot button stuff. We're going to be talking today about, can a Christian drink alcohol? I promise you, some of you are not going to like it. Some of you are going to get help. And then some of you are going to learn some things today. But before that we go into that, we'll get right into it in just a second. I want to say thank you to our Joy partners. We have people every single month that support this ministry, whether it's our radio broadcast, our television broadcast, our YouTube, Facebook, TikTok. All of that is because of you and your faithful support. If you'd like to become a Joy partner every month, you can find the link down below. Also, we had a lot of you ask questions in the comments on the last video. We're going to be making another video soon answering those. If you have some Bible questions, practical questions regarding the church, spiritual things, or just something you've always wanted somebody to answer, put that down below. We'll be happy to do that. All right, Avery, we've got some more questions. Let's hit it.
We do. So today we're going to be talking about alcohol and the controversy of alcohol. I don't have nearly as many questions as I did last time. But talk to me about, how does it work in the Bible when, it talks about, wine quite a bit in the Bible. Did Jesus ever drink wine?
I'm going to give you a very long answer with a very short synopsis. Okay? You have to start way back here, and this is where you've got to start. Number one, your opinion doesn't matter. My opinion, it doesn't matter. People that are going to watch this, what's going to happen is they go into a subject, especially alcohol, with a point to prove. Here's what I want. I want the truth. What is the truth? What is the right way and the wrong way? This is especially important when it comes to alcohol, because if you come into it with a preconceived notion, every piece of evidence is going to point to that. Me and Troy were actually talking about this this morning. When you're looking for a rat in the woodpile, you'll find a rat in every woodpile. When you have a preconceived notion or a conclusion you want to reach, I want to prove how it's okay to drink, then you're going to find the reason. I'm going to prove how it's not okay to drink. You're going to find the reason. What does it actually mean? Okay. So to answer your question, according to the Bible, in John chapter number 2, when Jesus is at the marriage at Cana, he turned the water into what?
Wine.
Okay, so the word wine, W-I-N-E, is used in the Bible. It's used in the Old Testament, it's used in the New Testament. The question is not, did he do that? I mean, we see that in the Bible. What was that? Okay, so here's what you have to understand about words. Words mean different things during different time periods. In the Bible, there are two different kinds of words used to describe what you and I would refer to as alcohol. In the Bible, there is a phrase, a word called wine, and then there is a word called strong drink. Okay. In the Bible, strong drink is always condemned. It's always wrong. It's always bad. Anyone that uses it is a fool. Anyone that uses it is always wrong. So these two things are always used, that phrase, strong drink. But we find that word wine used a whole bunch. You see Jesus in John 2 turn the water into wine. We see Paul commend to Timothy for his stomach. He says, take a little wine for the stomach's sake. So we do see this word wine used with Christians. We see it in the book of 1 Timothy, chapter number 3, when it talks about the pastor, the bishop, and then the deacons. The pastor is to have no wine. The bishop or the deacon, it says, is not to be one that uses much wine. So you see this used. So now we have to answer the question before people jump off a ledge and accuse me or you or of anything. The question now is, what is wine? Okay. The Greek word for wine is a Greek word which is very different than strong drink. They're two different things. Now, you can pull it up on your phone. You can get to Google. The AI will help you do this. Okay. In the Bible, now I've got an entire message I preach on the Christian and alcohol. Maybe you can link it in the video.
Yeah.
I go into so many more details about this. Okay. In the Bible, wine was used, a fermented drink, all right? It was used to kill or to sanitize water, to kill the germs in water. And here's what they would do. There would be a mixture, and you can look right now online, you can Google this, and a lot of times they would dilute it, the amount of water to the wine ratio. There would be, for 100 parts, 5% of it would be water, or it would be wine rather. So you've got a watered down, and it would be used, it would kill off so much of the alcohol. So here's the deal. When someone would get drunk off of wine, can you imagine how much they had to drink?
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay, so when the Bible talks about wine, it's talking about something that was massively watered down. Strong drink, on the other hand, it was normally 2-to-1 ratio.
Yeah.
Okay, fast forward to today. I know people think, what in the world? Okay, in our day, there is no wine, liquor, alcohol, mixed drink, anything that even comes close to that ratio of biblical wine. Our wine today, if you study the chemistry of it, is more akin to strong drink than it is to wine in the Bible. Okay?
Yeah.
So, did Jesus drink wine? Did Paul tell Timothy to take wine? Okay, the word, yes, wine, but it's apples and oranges compared to what we have today. That's the answer to that question.
Yeah.
So let me ask you a question then.
Okay.
Based off of that, based off of the chemistry of it, would you say it's okay to ingest wine today? Because even Paul said in the book of Ephesians, be not drunk with wine. Okay? Now, I'm going to tell you where I stand. I am what we would call a teetotaler. I'm against it completely.
Yeah.
For me, for my family, for my church, I am against it. When I came to pastor, when I've pastored the church that I've pastored now, that was one of the questions. What is your stand on alcohol? Now, this is a hot button issue, but when you study the chemistry of it, when you study the makeup of it, you cannot compare what was in the Bible to what we have today.
Yeah.
Okay. So I am completely and totally against wine, alcohol, and I'll give you the reasons why. If you want to know in a little bit, you can say that. So what do you think? If you just study the chemistry of it, based off of what I said, not going into the in-depth, what would you say?
I think it makes complete sense. My question, I hear a lot of people argue this as well, is like, what's the issue with, okay, they understand that, but like, from my understanding now, I've never consumed alcohol. I don't even think I've ever smelled it. So from my understanding, though, you can drink wine without getting drunk. So my question to you, and I know the answer, but for the viewer who may not, why is that not okay? Like, why is it not okay to, go out to a fancy dinner and, have a small little glass of wine?
Because in the Old Testament, when you study strong drink, the chemistry of it, that is akin to the chemistry makeup of even our quote-unquote weakest wines. The chemistry makeup is, our wine today is more akin to strong drink in the Bible. And in the Bible, strong drink is always condemned. Not just drunkenness, strong drink, being associated with strong drink simply because it was vile. It was known as something vile. Today, it's the same chemistry. That's why I'm completely against it. Now, the chemistry, the other reason, if somebody asks me, why don't I drink? And again, I go into it in the sermon. We may can link it again. I have a couple of reasons why I am absolutely against alcohol. A couple of reasons. My two main reasons are, number one, I don't want to be associated with anything that makes my brother or my sister stumble.
Yeah.
I'm a pastor. I lead a church. I have people that come into the flock. that have a background of drunkenness, have a background of all these things. I don't even want to be remotely close to anything that would make them stumble.
Yeah.
To see me do it, it's not worth it. I like Coca-Cola too much.
Yeah,
coffee's
exactly.
fine. That's a biblical reason. Number two, the main reason that I do not have anything to do with it is because of the appearance of evil. The Apostle Paul made the statement in 1 Thessalonians 5, abstain from all appearance of evil. And here's the question that I ask anybody. Viewers, comment down below. I will have this argument with anybody. I don't want to have the biblical argument because people have too many presuppositions. Here's my question. Paul told us to abstain from the appearance of evil. All appearance, not just any, all appearance. If you can name one good thing about alcohol, then I'll say, okay, it's not evil. Everything that alcohol is associated with today, it's evil. It comes from an evil background. What people do, being ingested and filled and drunk with all that stuff, it's wicked. I have zero tolerance for that stuff. There is nothing good, nothing. If I had a beer or a bottle of wine or a glass of wine on here, people watch this, not one of them would watch it and immediately think a good thought.
Yeah.
Their mind would immediately go to an evil place. That's the nature of the bottle. It's wicked as the devil.
Yeah.
Filthy, vile, wretched, and I have no tolerance for that. Okay, take the comparison. If I had a Coca-Cola can right here, now there'd be some people that say, I can't believe he's drinking Coke, but the vast majority of people would not go in a bad direction.
True.
Alcohol, that's why I abstain from the appearance. Now, the third reason is more as the leader of my home. And an old-time preacher that said this to me one time, and I want you to put this in your heart. You put this in your heart, people that watch this. What I do in moderation, my children will do in excess. I don't want to be the one to expose my children to that.
Yeah.
I don't know what my kids will do. I don't know the vices and the problems my children will have. My kids could walk that path.
Yeah.
My kids could go down drugs. It's possible. I pray, I operate, I do everything I can to keep them from that. They could. Yours can, mine can, all of them. But I don't want them to go down that because of me.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's what I'd say. Those are my main reasons. Again, I go into a bunch, but those are my main reasons.
Yeah. So my next question would be, this is kind of a twofold question. So the first one would be, many people say, I've heard when people talk about alcohol and everything, they talk about it opens you up to spirits and evil spirits.
Good.
And, possession's not the right word, but you kind of understand.
Influence.
Yeah.
Influence. So that's actually a good little thought, and I don't know that I have studied that out completely, but I see where they're coming from. I'm going to tell you why. In the Old Testament, strong drink, when you see that, was often associated with idol worship. Okay? It was used in the temples of pagan gods. You see some of them in the Old Testament, Molech, Dagon, some of those gods. Strong drink, drunkenness, liquor, wine, overcoming your senses, drugs, alcohol, all of that, it was associated with idol worship. So I would be very apt to believe that line of thinking, that drunkenness would open you up to things that you don't want to open yourself up to in the spirit world. Now, I'm a Baptist. I've been a Baptist since I was saved, but I'll tell you where we Baptists have missed it. We don't really look into that spirit world a lot. Now, again, it can be a rabbit hole that you can go down, but I do think that one reason why addiction is so strong, and I believe this until the day I die, one reason why addiction is so hard to beat, and we have people week after week on TikTok and on Facebook, they comment, they message us, trying to beat those addictions.
Yeah.
One reason is not just the chemical dependency. There is a real spiritual bondage that comes from that. I believe that 1,000%.
Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly what they said. I'd be apt to walk that path with them, though.
Yeah. I've never understood it just from a standpoint of it opens you up it's a slippery slope.
Mm-hmm.
You're really opening up yourself for the possibility of becoming addicted to it.
Yeah, and I've never understood that. Why in the world? Now, again, you can probably take this line of thinking with a lot of different things, maybe. Why in the world would you open yourself up to something that has destroyed so many? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's not the case. Again, you maybe could take that line of thinking with a lot of things, but that's not the normal end for most people.
Yeah.
On other things. Alcohol, rarely, I mean, most, I don't want to paint with a broad brush. It usually ends with some sort of dependence.
Yeah.
Usually ends with some sort of issue.
Yeah.
And I'm not going down that path. Why would I open myself up to something that is probably going to, it's foolishness.
Yeah.
I don't understand it. Now, again, that is a hill I die on because I don't understand it. Now, I did not come from that background. My father did not. My mama did not. We don't have that in our background. Some of my family, has dealt with some of the alcoholism kind of far off in the family tree. And I've seen nothing but bad at a distance.
Yeah.
Now, pastoring, I have seen things, wives, they've got children, their husbands are alcoholics, or vice versa, husbands, their wives are. I don't understand. It's not worth it.
Yeah.
It is not worth it.
Do you think people, this is a left field question, do you think people that
Avery, can we stop?
Yes.
You are full of left field. This guy right here, he is the king of left field questions, but somehow they always lead to something fantastic.
Yes.
So that's why I let you ask them.
Exactly. I don't know that I have any right field questions.
I don't think you do. No.
When people are drunk and whether that's from circumstances of I don't think I know no man is innocent, but some people get into drinking from severe losses or severe. Do you think people, a lot of people abuse alcohol, and from that can have abuse in the household can take place?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that person who is drunk and out of their mind is held fully accountable for anything that they do?
I'll answer that question firmly but compassionately. Yes. You absolutely. You are not excused. I'm not excused. People are not excused simply because they're not fully in the right mind because of a decision they made. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
This is not a case of someone sadly with an Alzheimer's and their mind is not there, but they didn't choose the Alzheimer's, and they say something or they hit somebody. That's a different ballgame. Someone that's drunk but chose to drink. Mm-hmm. They made the choice. Now again, they're alcoholic, but they chose to drink.
Yeah.
And yes, they're fully held responsible. They should be, as should I, or should you.
Yeah.
But it's just sad. I think for me as a pastor, to see people that are so hurt, people that are watching, they listen to the preaching, and they're so hurt and broken and sad from something in the past that they just have to cover it and they have to mask it, or they feel so dependent on that, and they're not trusting fully in Christ to fall. It's heartbreaking. Yeah, they're responsible, just like I'm responsible, but it's sad to me.
Yeah.
And teenagers and kids, 20, 21, 22 years old, come from broken homes, and they come from situations where they've been abused, kids that have been hurt, and they just perpetuate the cycle. It's sad to me. And listen, if there are people that are listening right now, people that are broken, there is hope in Christ and there's healing in Christ. Christ does not take away what happened. That's the sadness of living in a broken world. Mm-hmm. Christ doesn't take away what happened, but Christ does bring healing.
Yeah.
Christ does bring purpose. He brings what I call the Joseph moment. I ought to write something on that. The Joseph moment is you did go through the pit. You did end up being betrayed at Potiphar's house. You did end up in the prison because of someone else. But what the devil meant for evil, God can turn it for good. And what others meant to bring you down through Christ can put you in the palace of God's purpose.
Yeah.
And I would say that those people that are watching right now, through counseling, through prayer, through healing, through time, through mentorship, through being in church and staying faithful to the house of God, being under the care of a pastor, God can bring healing. Through the Spirit of the living God, He can heal people. And I'm believing in that. And that's one reason why I hope I can answer these questions and we can talk about this and people not feel that judgment. They can get truth, but not feel that judgment.
Yeah.
So that would be my little spiel on that.
One thing I've heard it talk about that a lot of people have talked about now, with how easily accessible everything is in the addiction world, whether that's drugs, pornography, alcohol. I heard one guy talk about you got to stop trusting yourself to get out of it.
Absolutely.
You've got to make it impossible for yourself, whether that's getting rid of your credit card. You've got to get out of it because it's so hard to get out of it otherwise.
1,000% agree. Whether it's alcohol, pornography. You've heard me preach this before. If your phone is your source of temptation for pornography, you need to chunk it and get a flip phone. I have dealt with guys before pastoring, and again, I'm not a counselor. I don't pretend to be a counselor. But I have told guys before that are tempted with alcohol, that may mean you're used to driving a certain way home, and when you were battling that addiction, you always stopped at this store and got alcohol, beer, or whatever. It may mean you've got to drive 15 minutes around.
Yeah, that's good.
You're absolutely 1,000% correct. The ease of accessibility may mean there has to be a level of discipline and determination to stay away from that sickness, so that open door, rather.
Exactly.
Because what happens is, and again, I'm not a doctor. If I knew a doctor that could give us this very quickly today, and we didn't just set these microphones up, we'd probably get them. But there's this chemical thing with this dependence, and what happens is you're riding down a road, and something triggers, and it sets this thing off within us. And absolutely, you may have to change where you live.
Yeah.
You may have to throw a computer out, a cell phone out. Man, you may have to change where you go eat. But you do what you've got to do, not to let the chains of sin wrap back around you.
Is it really worth doing those things to get out of it?
Me answering, yeah. But ask the guy that's lost everything if he's not willing to do whatever it takes.
Yeah.
Ask the woman whose marriage fell apart because of her struggle and her battle and her addiction, if it wasn't worth doing whatever if he could, if those kids could. Ask the man who got drunk and got in a vehicle and killed a family, who's sitting in prison right now, if he would not go back and do everything it would take to change. So absolutely, it's worth whatever.
How do you see that on their side of the equation, though? I know it's easy to see
compassionately. I would never sit here in the chair of judgment saying, I don't know why you just don't do this. Just do it. I don't know why you just don't do it. Just do it now. It's easy. I sit here in the chair of counsel as a pastor, as a brother, as a friend, somebody that is not going to excuse away the problem, but is going to have compassion. And I'm going to sit here and I'm going to say, do it.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard. It's going to be tough, but you got to do it.
I'm saying more so from the person who's maybe watching and trying to give up alcohol actively, and they're like, man, it's not that big of a deal. I'm not changing how I drive. I'm not throwing my phone away. How did they see that it's worth it before they get to the other side?
An old man told me one time, payday's not always on Friday. What does that mean? Just because it hasn't happened doesn't mean it's not going to happen. That person is going to have to look at it not from experience, but from the mistakes of others. And you are going to have to, no, I can't convince that person. You can't convince that person. The person that has that attitude and that mindset, well, it's not that bad, it hasn't happened. Unfortunately, I'm afraid that they're going to have to learn the hard way. I don't want them to. Yeah. I pray that it doesn't. I pray that it is nothing as huge. So that's my thought.
So I'm going to ask you, so you referenced earlier 1 Timothy 3:8, where it's talking about the qualifications of a deacon, and also talks about the pastor. So I know we defined what strong drink was and what wine was. Likewise, must deacons, 1 Timothy 3:8, likewise must the deacons be grave, not double-tongued, not given to much wine. So obviously you said there still was some sort of an alcohol content in the wine, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So the reason not much wine was so they didn't get drunk. So if that's the case, why was the pastor not allowed to drink any at all?
I think it had to do with the appearance of evil. I don't know the answer to that fully. My theory, again, you've got to remember the level of alcohol that would have been in any wine biblically was for sanitation reason, to sanitize it, to kill any contaminants. But it would have still, again, just like anything we drink today, coffee, you can get hopped up on caffeine. Coca-Cola, you can get hopped up on the sugar. I think for the pastor, to answer your question specifically, I think it had to do with the fact that it was the moderation thing. It was the man that was so fully dedicated to the work of the church that he was so focused on that. He abstained from any amount, any appearance, any blemish on his record at all.
Yeah.
And I think that it goes less to the alcohol thing, more to the level of the office of the pastor. That's what I believe.
That's good. So my last question here, and this is going to be a curveball. You're going to have to walk with me here for a second, because if we're not careful, I feel like we're going to get off the wrong exit.
It's okay. If I start pulling off, show me.
Yes. So I'm paraphrasing here, but so there are, different addictions, but I feel like the two main ones are, some sort of abuse of a substance, whether that's alcohol or drugs. So you have that. I'm going to kind of group those together.
Okay.
And then you have sexual sin.
Okay.
I feel like those are two. Would you concur that those are probably the two main addictions?
I would say substance and sexual sin to some degree. But I think that all of those fall into the lust of the flesh.
Yeah.
Okay, but yes, I'm with you.
Okay, so there's the verse that talks about, we're not only not to do those things, but and I'm completely forgetting where it's at, but it talks about fleeing from sexual immoralities, from sin. Why, from there we're not only supposed to just resist it, but to flee completely. Why does it not talk about that with other addictions such as alcohol? Why are we not supposed to, like you recommended that earlier, fleeing and getting away from reminders of it? But why does the Bible not say that?
So actually, Paul deals with that, the power and the end result of sexual sin. He deals with that in 1 Corinthians 6:7. And what he says is those sins of morality, sexual sins, fornication, he said that those are actually sins against the body. There is something about sexual sin that does physical, emotional, spiritual damage to a person. And so he says it is so vital that you stay away from that. We as a person do not have the ability in our sin nature to run from that. You have to flee from that. It's almost as if the sexual sin, and I don't know that I would call it addiction. I think that those are two, I think that's apples and oranges.
Okay.
My opinion.
Yeah.
What you're specifically talking about is sexual sin that comes from the temptation. Now, I think pornography and those things like that could be linked, but I don't think that specifically.
Okay.
Paul's talking about sexual immorality. He said that is a sin against the body. So the reason he doesn't say flee those other things is because those are kind of like two. He's talking about two different things there. I do think that the phrase in 1 Thessalonians that I talked about a while ago, 1 Thessalonians 5, abstain from all appearance of it. I think that has the idea of shun, push away, reject, get out of your presence. But no, it doesn't have probably the exact, exit off that the run from, flee from does. So, apples and oranges. Biblically, studying the words, apples and oranges there.
Yeah.
But you need to get away from it. You don't play with it, especially if you're dealing with an addiction. It's not something to play with.
Yeah. Would you say that because it doesn't say to flee, that I know they're both terrible, but is one more harmful or less harmful because it doesn't tell you to flee from strong drink?
I don't know that I would say less harmful, more harmful. I don't know that I would maybe classify it like that. I'm trying to make sure that I don't mince my words here and I don't confuse my words. I want to be clear. They're all bad, wrong, sinful, stay away from, don't touch. But answering your question, I would probably say that one does seem to have a quicker destruction. The sexual sin, the sexual addictions, the pornography. Because Paul does specifically say it's a sin against the body, it does seem to have a different level of destructiveness. But the Proverbs talk very clearly about the end result of somebody that deals and goes down the line of strong drink and alcoholism and addiction. For all intents and purposes.
Yeah.
I think the end result, the finish line, is the same for both. It's destruction.
Yeah.
I think the speed by which you get there is probably a little quicker with the sexual addictions than it is the alcoholic substance addictions. That's my opinion. I have no scientific proof on that. But if you study biblically, I think that would be the only difference. Finish line, same. Destruction, you get there a little quicker with the sexual addictions.
Yeah. So let me ask you one last question in conclusion here. So most people who are alcoholics or have a problem, they know. Like, it's not one of those things where they're like, well, at least most of the time. And okay, well, I actually don't have anything to base it off of, so I'm
listening.
But so most of the time they know they have a problem, but they're unable. They don't. So things, when you bring it up, you're like, I feel like you have a problem or something. One of your friends. So let's say, for example, I have a friend who's struggling with alcoholism.
It's a little easier to put a label on it, is what you're saying.
Yeah. So, but for instance, that friend knows. Mm-hmm. What can I do from my position when my friend already knows they have a problem, but I feel like I'm just beating them over the head every time I bring it up? What is the best way to approach someone who has already identified they have a problem but is struggling to
stop? Are they
stop?
Trying to get help?
I don't know. I couldn't answer that.
Well, that's going to determine how you're going to respond, okay? Someone that knows they have a problem but is not trying to get help doesn't know they have a problem, for the most part. Very few people know they have a problem or the depth of their problem and don't do anything about it. You may deny the problem. You may say it's not that bad. But if your friend is there, doesn't know, then you have to continually pray that God will open their eyes. Okay? And you need to pray what I would call the prodigal's father's prayer. Lord, let the hog pen stink. Let the slop be nasty. And let them get there quick. The prodigal son does not leave the far country until he gets tired of those things and realizes there's something better back at home. Back at Daddy's house, there's something better. That's the prayer you need to pray. Okay, what do you do when your friend is trying to get help, knows that they have a problem, and I don't know what to do, Avery. What do I do? You need to determine to be your brother's keeper. Okay, you encourage them, you keep them in check. And you do everything in your power to make sure that you are not a cause for their fall. You got to think about it like this. Most people that have addictions like that, it was social at some point. They were drinking in public. Okay, well, if you're friends, you were probably doing what at one time or around that. It's your job now to make sure we're not going back down that route.
Yeah.
If you've got a friend coming home from the far country, what would you do if you're walking with him? You're going to keep your eyes on the Father's house. Hey, there's bread up there. We can make it. Daddy's got a party for us. Everybody's going to be happy for it. It's going to be great. You don't talk about the far country. Don't get them to look back. When they look back, turn them back to the Father's house. That's your job as a friend, as a believer in Christ. You keep their eyes on Christ. If there's a mama listening, a dad listening that has a child that way or a spouse that way, keep their eyes on Christ. Keep their eyes on the good stuff. Keep their eyes on where they're going, not where they've been. Be encouraging. Keep them going to their counselor. If you know they used to struggle going a certain way home, guess where we're going, buddy? We're taking the long route home tonight. That's what I would tell you to do. Determined to be your brother's keeper and keep their eyes on the Father's house.
Yeah. Very good.
Hey, do me a favor. Pray for us. You pray that God will bless us. We're going to pray for you. And if we can ever help you, let us know.